Hello, my name's Bernard Frischer. I'm sorry I can't be with you today in Vienna, and let me begin by thanking the organizers of CHNT 2021 for giving me and my company Flyover Zone the opportunity to speak to you today remotely about a topic that is very important for our company, and I hope for many of you. As my subtitle suggests, the topic is the same one inspiring this year's edition of CHNT. How can we use new technology to support sustainable research, conservation, and communication of cultural sites and monuments? And to this list of 3 laudable goals, I would add a 4th. How can we increase accessibility of cultural heritage sites for people with disabilities? In a larger sense, I think my topic concerns almost all of the attendees of CHNT 2021. We are all, one way or another, involved in applying new technologies to the study of cultural heritage. We do this both to pursue new research and also as part of our jobs to communicate with our students and with the general public. The technologies that have fascinated me for the past 30 years are 3D digital tools that can help us to document the condition of a monument, to develop hypotheses of restoration, and to recontextualize the monument in its original cityscape or landscape. They can also serve as a platform for empirical, or what I like to call sympirical, experimentation. And finally, for teaching people about the past by showing them how sites and monuments probably looked before they were damaged or even reduced to ruins. From my first publication in this field way back in 1988 until the present day, I have used the 3D restorations and reconstructions my lab has made as resources for education. I have taken many students and colleagues on fly-throughs of the recreated sites, giving them live commentary about what they were seeing along the way. In effect, I was taking them on what today we call virtual tours, involving something not possible in the real world: time travel. A few years ago, I started a company called Flyover Zone to commercialize these scientific 3D models and virtual tours. I did this because I'd been helping Palmer Luckey since even before he started distributing his DK1 in 2013. He gave me a heads up that his company would soon start selling its Oculus Rift to consumers in the spring of 2016. The price was set to be well under $1,000. So after years of being able to show my work only to a relatively few students and colleagues at a handful of universities fortunate enough to have an expensive virtual reality installation, I could anticipate that at last a consumer market would quickly be created where you could buy an Oculus Rift for a few $100s. Just to remind you of the situation before Palmer Luckey came along, HMDs, such as those sold by Sensix, cost over $100,000 each, if you can believe it. The primary mission of Flyover Zone is to create and to market virtual tours that educators and the general public can take with the assurance that what they see and what they hear is as scientifically valid and as up-to-date as possible. In the 5 years since the company was founded, we learned a lot and got a lot bigger. We started with 1 employee and now have 30 collaborators in 8 countries on 3 continents. You see the team leaders on this slide. We have published virtual tours offering visits to various sites in ancient Rome, Hadrian's Villa, and Baalbek. In the near future, we will be adding tours to important sites in a series of publications to be called Athens Reborn, Egypt Reborn, Great Monuments, and Mesoamerica Reborn. In this talk, My goal is to persuade you that what I call Virtual Tourism 2.0, as developed by Flyover Zone, can be a useful tool to achieve the goals of CHNT 2021. I want to make sure that, from the start, I drive home just how relevant this can be for those listening to me today at CHNT. Flyover Zone sponsored this talk and this conference because we need you as much as we hope you need us. Up to now, we have sold our users perpetual licenses through the stores of Apple, Google Play, Microsoft, and Steam. We have gotten positive reviews, and as the media coverage you see in this slide suggests, we have developed a solid reputation for delivering quality products in this newly emergent business of virtual tourism. Starting in a few months, we will take a different approach to distribution, streaming our virtual tours to a freely downloadable app available on those same stores I just mentioned. For a single annual subscription fee, our users can take all of our tours, and we will commit ourselves to adding at least 6 new tours each year. We call the app Yorescape. Now here is where you come in. Some of the new tours on our platform are those we develop ourselves. Others we publish for third parties, such as those some of you listening to me today may have already created or are planning to create. If you fall into this category, please think of Flyover Zone as your peer-reviewed scientific publication outlet for distributing your new media creations to a large international audience. Before getting into the details of how this will work, let's pause to define the terms and concepts in the title of my talk. Most important of these are what I am calling Virtual Tourism 1.0 and 2.0. Of course, everyone here is quite familiar with real-world tourism. How could we not be? According to Eric Zulo, it is the world's biggest service industry, accounting for $1.4 trillion of global economic activity in 2018. Of course, not all tourism involves cultural heritage, but according to the United Nations World Tourist Organization, in 2018, cultural tourism accounted for fully half of that $1.4 trillion. Cultural tourism might involve travel to a museum, an archaeological site, a music festival, or the house of a famous artist or writer. Prior to COVID, this was a booming $700 billion industry, and so we think it reasonable to expect that virtual tourism to cultural heritage sites could itself become, say, a billion-dollar sector by the year 2030. In fact, there is some evidence that among the few silver linings of the COVID-19 pandemic is that it has brought an increase in the general public's interest in virtual tourism. Using Google Trends for the period 2018 to the present, we can see that the trend line has been gradually upward for the phrase virtual tourism. If we add to the graph the term Colosseum tour, shown in red, we can see that during the period of COVID, interest in real-world tourism to places like the Colosseum has understandably fallen in just about inverse proportion to the rise of interest in virtual tourism. As befits its importance to the world economy, real-world tourism is well studied and has been approached from the points of view of economics, ecology, history, and we even have a compendious encyclopedic treatment edited by Peter Robinson and published in 2012. So now, just to be sure that we're all on the same page regarding the definition of virtual tourism, let me quote the one given by Peter Robinson. Virtual tourism, he wrote, offers tourists an opportunity to visit and to experience a destination using a computer or other technologies. Such technologies provide travelers with an opportunity to view a destination before they visit, and is best exemplified through the multi-layered datasets provided through Google Earth, which offers street-level navigation and images, also referred to as 3D VT, or three-dimensional virtual tourism, where viewers may interact with a destination without actually having to travel to it. And of course, next to Google Earth, we might as well mention Street View on Google Maps and Google Arts and Culture. We should also note the many virtual tours that have been offered by companies or cultural heritage institutions. When we were less than a month into the COVID-19 pandemic, the American popular magazine Good Housekeeping, or GH for short, ran an article suggesting that, in addition to watching programs on Netflix, its readers might want to stave off boredom and broaden your cultural horizons with some virtual tours. In this slide, you see the listing of the 30 virtual tours that the magazine recommended. If we examine the list, we see that many of the recommended tours used Facebook Live. Others were found in Google Arts and Culture. Many of the museum tours are more virtual museums than virtual tours, in the sense that they allow you to see the works of art or entire galleries, but they do not offer a virtualized tour of the actual building, let alone give you a guide who explains what you are viewing. A case in point is the Guggenheim online. If you click on one of those thumbnails, you see an enlargement of the work of art, but you do not hear a guide explaining the painting to you. Other things listed by GH do allow you to click on a panoramic photograph of rooms in a museum, as is the case with what the Vatican Museums labels its virtual tours. Yet in this case, too, there is no information provided about what is being seen. And even if we zoom in as far as we can, we still cannot gather that information ourselves simply by reading the label on the object. Here, for example, is the Braccio Nuovo Gallery of the Vatican Museums. The panoramic photo is wonderful. I love it. And the museum is to be praised for making such views of its galleries available. But even on my laptop's 4K screen, as you can see, I cannot read the fuzzy label under the statue. So what museums such as these are thus far offering are not really tours, whether virtual or not, in the usual sense of the term. A tour presumes a guide, or a resource like a guidebook or audio guide, or even just a label that is a substitute for a real human guide. What about Google, especially Arts and Culture? We find that here too, as in the case of the Vatican Museums tour, there is an absence of commentary and an even more troubling random placement of the panoramas around the gallery. Now, there are certainly some virtual tours out there that do feature guides, and I've taken quite a few of them. I would consider them worthy of being called true examples of virtual tourism, since they both show you the monuments and provide commentary to help you understand what you are seeing. Here is an example that can be considered typical of these real virtual tours. In it, a live guide used Zoom to present Piccadilly Circus in London. I will play a short clip of a recording I made of the tour.
A 19th century philanthropist who cleared a huge slum area very near to Piccadilly Circus, creating Shaftsbury Avenue with no less than 6 of the major sort of heavy-hitting theatres like the Palace Theatre, the Apollo, the Gielgud, along Shaftesbury Avenue. So it's a major route through the theatre district. And this was a memorial to say thank you to Lord Shaftesbury. So how on earth did it get this name? Well, there's lots of sort of theories about why Eros is called Eros. He does look like the god of love with his Cupid-like bow. But in actual fact, this Victorian memorial has a sort of pun to it. It said, if you look, the angel has fired the arrow from his bow and the shaft of the arrow has been buried nearby. Shaftsbury, do you see? Oh, how Victorian is that? And so that's a sort of pun on his name. But of course, many people might say, well, the entertainment district after dark became known as a bit of a red light district, and you could meet your love at the Angel of Christian Charity, the God of Love. You could sort of see how it developed. So it's sort of a little bit of double entendre there. There's so much to delight, isn't there, in Piccadilly Circus? And there's always a sort of energy and expectation when you go there.
Well, this example does involve a guide, and a very vivacious and engaging one, I would say, who explains what we are seeing. I think, though, that you will agree with me that her virtual tour more closely approximates a lecture in a classroom than a virtual version of what it would actually be like to be part of a group visiting Piccadilly Circus in the company of a guide. Virtual Tourism 2.0 is what Flyover Zone has developed. Let me now show you a short video that will give you an example of our approach using our new streaming app, Yorescape, which will be released shortly. Our tours can be taken on mobile devices, PCs, and VR headsets. In the video, I show you an example of our software running on an iPhone. The person explaining what you're seeing is our CEO, Nathaniel Tavares.
Experience. Here we arrive at the dashboard. There is a brief tutorial. And the dashboard is a place where you can see all of our applications grouped into collection. For example, here we have the Rome Reborn collection with all of our Rome applications. Selecting one like the Basilica gives you a description. It shows you a gallery of images for that particular tour. You can scroll through those. Once you select a tour, you're taken to the tour itself, which has a guided or explore mode. Guided mode is a set of predetermined stops on a tour where we have chosen the path and we take you there. Explore mode allows you to pick the stops via the map in the top right. Right now we're just showing how you can dive into different subsections of a given stop, which will discuss various points of information. You're also able to pan around the scene in any direction. You can click
Welcome
play
to Baalbek,
and listen to the
ancient
audio.
Heliopolis.
In the settings, we can change the language. There is an audio language as well as a closed caption language. So here we're going to see the
Welcome
German
to Baalbek, ancient
closed
Heliopolis.
captions with the English audio.
In this application,
And now we'll show that you can have German audio with German closed captions as well in this example.
Willkommen in Baalbek, dem antiken Heliopolis. In unserer App besuchen wir diese Stadt um das Jahr 215 nach Christus, also zum
Closed
Höhepunkt
captions
ihrer
can also be
antiken Entwicklung.
disabled.
Wir schauen aus der Vogelperspektive über die BK, eine fruchtbare Hochebene, die sich über 120 Kilometer Länge zwischen den beiden Gebirgsketten Libanon und Antilibanon erstreckt. Vor uns liegt die Stadt Baalbek.
For each stop on a tour, we have an information section where you can go through relevant photos of that stop. You can see a text blurb that gives you a bit of information. In the top right, you can click the map icon, which will let you go through the various maps of the stops on a given tour. As you can see, we've teleported to another stop. This tour has 38 stops on it. The various buttons below allow you to switch between now and then, or what we call a time warp. And in Baalbek, in particular, we have what's called a hypothetical reconstruction, which actually brings the statues into the niches there.
Next, I want to aggregate all the virtual tours I have seen during the past year of the COVID pandemic as examples of Virtual Tourism 1.0 and give you a list of their common features. At the same time, I will contrast these features with the approach our company takes, which I will call Virtual Tourism 2.0. Let's start with the underlying technology. In version 1.0, it is typically Zoom, Google Meet, or Facebook Live. In 2.0, it is a game engine such as Unity or Unreal. This difference in platform has some important consequences. For example, on all platforms except the mobile, we typically support freely roaming around the 3D model of the site visited. Obviously, you can't do that on Zoom. We give our users on all the platforms a clickable map with points of interest indicated. They can click and teleport to that spot. Again, this is not something you can let your users do on Meet, Facebook Live, or Zoom. In general, we can say that Virtual Tourism 1.0 emphasizes the guide and not the monument visited. Virtual Tourism 2.0 puts the stress on immersivity and interactivity. In version 1.0, what you see, the visual assets, are usually 2D photos or panoramas of the site as it appeared today, with the odd image of how it might have looked in antiquity thrown in. In version 2.0, we do show you the monument as it appears at present, but we really stress time travel by using that time warp feature that Nathaniel Tavares showed you. We take our users back to see the monument in its heyday, hundreds or thousands of years ago, before it was in ruins or even destroyed. Regarding the guide, in version 1.0, it is the guide who pre-selects the points of interest, or POIs, by putting her slides in a certain order, taking us from POI to POI. In contrast, in version 2.0, it is the virtual tourist who has control, freely roaming around the site or using that clickable map to teleport from point of interest to point of interest as her curiosity leads her onwards in any order that makes sense to her. At any POI, our virtual tourist can click on the Start Audio icon and listen to an explanation of what they are seeing given by our expert guide. Our guides are the very same leading scholars who help us to create the 3D reconstructions of the site. Finally, our virtual travelers don't have to click on the audio button to hear the commentary of our experts if they don't want to. As I will illustrate in a moment, we support multiplayer experiences. In the multiplayer mode, one of the participants can herself play the role of a guide. Alternately, the participant can play off against our pre-recorded expert guide, agreeing and disagreeing as seems best to her. Regarding communication, in Virtual Tourism 1.0, the audience can hear the speaker, but are typically not allowed to talk. At most, they can use the chat box to pose a question or to make a comment. Language offered is the one spoken by the tour guide. Virtual Tourism 2.0 supports multiplayer functionality so everybody can talk to everybody else. They can chat, and they can point out the features at a stop about which they have a question or about which they wish to make a comment. A closed caption translation of the pre-recorded audio is available in many of the world's major languages, including Chinese, English, French, German, Italian, and Spanish. Let me play a clip showing multiplayer at work in Yorescape.
Hey there, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Not too bad. You ready to get started?
Yep, let's do it.
All right.
Welcome to Baalbek, ancient Heliopolis.
In this tour, we visit the city as it appeared around the year 215 of our era, which can be considered the peak of its ancient development. We are looking at the sanctuary from the west. This means that we see it from the rear, looking not only in the direction of the rising sun,
but also in the direction of one of the springs that are so important for Baalbek.
Hey, can we switch to the Propylaea?
Sure, let's take a look.
We are now standing in front of the Propylaea, the entrance to the holy precinct of the Sanctuary of Jupiter.
So you can already see that in terms of media, virtual tourism provides a far richer experience for users than does version 1.0. 2.0 empowers users to follow their curiosity around a site. It puts the emphasis on the immersive experience of the site. Our users can recruit friends, family, or if they are teachers, their students, to go on a tour with them. Everyone on a tour can communicate by talking, chatting, or pointing. They can always get information from a leading expert about what they are seeing in many of the world's major languages. So Virtual Tourism 2.0 is, I think it's fair to say, more immersive, interactive, and much more social than is Virtual Tourism 1.0. In terms of accessibility to the disabled, both the Zoom slideshows of Virtual Tourism 1.0 and our 2.0 tours can be used by infirm people who are not able to travel. We strive to make our virtual tours compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we have a lot of experience testing our tours on the disabled. Our experience is that the empowerment of the user to go where she wants to go and see what she wants to see, as well as the immersivity of the medium, especially of a device such as a VR headset, makes our tours a good way to mitigate disabilities. Here I am especially thinking of people using wheelchairs or residing in an assisted living facility. Another benefit of Virtual Tourism 2.0 is that our tours are repeatable as many times as our subscribers wish. In contrast, the typical example of Virtual Tourism 1.0 is a one-time 60-minute performance that cannot be repeated. Despite this big difference, our annual subscription, giving you many tours, costs about the same as that one 60-minute show, $20. Finally, in terms of content, the information provided by our experts is vetted by other experts before it is recorded and made available to our virtual tourists. Virtual Tourism 2.0 is practiced by our company, strives to give users the latest, most up-to-date information about the monuments and to make sure that that information is reliable. Contrast this with the typical offering commercially available on a Virtual Tourism 1.0 Zoom-based platform such as World Virtual Tours. Most of the time, apart from his name, you have no idea who your guide is and what his qualifications may be. To illustrate this, I will now play a 1-minute 45-second clip of this company's tour of the Colosseum given on April 3rd, 2021. As you will see from the annotations with accompanying blooper beeps that I have added, I count 8 major and minor errors made by the guide, whose qualifications were never made clear and who in any case is probably not a recognized expert.
Boring story, but it's important to understand why the Colosseum was built. We are in a few years before 80 AD. You see this phase up to the right is the Emperor Nero. Everybody knows Nero. You see this reconstruction, this 3D reconstruction of the Circus Maximus. And you see the fire spreading from the stadium. What happened? In 68 AD, the fire spread from the Circus Maximus, and in 2 weeks, 50% of the city of Rome had been destroyed. There wasn't any Colosseum yet at that time. The Emperor Nero did a good job. He rebuilt the city. He rebuilt so many areas. But at a certain point, he made the wrong decision. He bought, literally, 40% of the city of Rome with his own money. It was a portico with a statue of Nero. It was 140 feet high, a statue of Nero being 140 feet high.
Well, in contrast, our tours have a principal author who is always a leading expert on the site, as well as a scientific advisory committee helping out. For example, I am the author of many of our Rome Reborn tours. Rome Reborn tours are also overseen by our scientific committee of distinguished scholars. Our Baalbek Reborn tour was authored by Henning Berwitz, with input from his colleagues in the Oriental Department of the German Archaeological Institute in Berlin. Our tour of the Acropolis in Athens was a group effort led by Jennifer Niles, the director of the American School of Classical Studies at Athens, our country's premier research institution in Greece. In crafting our scripts, we adhere to the best practice guidelines laid out in the London Charter and the Seville Principles. This means, for example, that when there are uncertainties in a 3D reconstruction, we explicitly mention them to our virtual tourists, and we use visual cues to signal them as well. Here, for example, you are looking at our 3D restoration of the south frieze of the Temple of Athena Nike on the Acropolis in Athens. Today, some fragments exist. They're very beaten up and battered. Note that the part of the frieze for which no evidence survives is visually flagged by the use of transparency. When our subscription service Yorescape starts in a few months, we will already have 8 tours in our portfolio, and we will guarantee a minimum of 6 new tours per year. Of course, we will try to add even more than that, and this is where the CHNT community comes in, and we hope helps us. Flyover Zone can itself produce 6 tours a year given our current staff of about 30 collaborators. But each year we can publish several more tours created by third parties, such as those of you listening to me today at CHNT. The fact that our third-party publications are first peer-reviewed before we accept them means that what you publish through Flyover Zone should count as a scientific publication on your CV. As far as we know, there are few, if any, new media publication outlets that can make this claim. This fact already helps with sustainability. In the past, members of this community could get publication credit for scientific papers about their new media creations, but rarely, if ever, for those creations themselves. Flyover Zone aims to start remedying this injustice, which I don't know about you, but I've felt since the 1980s. And this should make what you do more sustainable in terms of your employment and your career development. We also help research and sustainability by financing virtual tourism projects by qualified third parties. Finally, even for those projects we do not finance, but simply publish once they are ready to be disseminated, we pay a royalty to the creators and/or to their institutions, and this is a final way we contribute to research and its sustainability. I mentioned that we work with both open access and paid access models of scientific publication. Regarding open access, we are happy to create virtual tours on commission and then to give the tours away for free. You can commission us to make a tour for your museum, your archaeological site. I've shown a case in point in those 2 videos seen earlier, presenting Baalbek Reborn. Since we launched Baalbek Reborn on March 31st, 2021, there have been over 30,000 free downloads. So if you have the funding and are interested in having the greatest possible dissemination of your virtual tour, you will want to consider adopting our open access model. In contrast, the paid access model presumes that our customers pay for the tour through their subscriptions. It is not available for free to non-subscribers. Paid access is thus suitable for projects which are in part designed to make your research sustainable, because Flyover Zone will pay you and/or your institution a royalty. What sorts of sites are we interested in? Given that we are a commercial company still in the startup phase, we must concentrate on those that are most appealing to the general public around the world or most useful to teachers of subjects like art history, geography, and world culture. Certainly, any site on the UNESCO list of World Heritage would greatly interest us. So as you can see, Virtual Tourism 2.0 is intended to be a way that cultural heritage professionals can take control of this important new medium and apply their own long-standing professional standards of public communication. It can help to sustain cultural heritage research and cultural heritage institutions by generating an income stream through royalties earned on sales to a global audience. It can improve the quality of visitor experience to cultural heritage sites and monuments by making it possible for people to prepare before they leave on a tour, to use our virtual tours as augmented reality guides when on site, and to keep their memories alive and to deepen their understanding once they return home. For teachers, Virtual Tourism 2.0 can enrich the classroom by making it easy to take students on virtual field trips to the very cultures they are studying in a course, and to be confident that what is seen and heard on a tour is accurate and up-to-date information provided by the world's leading experts. For the aged, infirm, and disabled, such as the people you saw who live in that assisted living facility near our company's headquarters, it can offer a valid substitute for real-world tourism without the rigors of physical travel. Well, I hope this talk has whetted your appetite to learn more, and even better, to propose a collaboration with our company. On the screen, you see my email address and the URL of our company website. If you have a finished tour you think we might wish to publish, or just an idea for one you would like to propose, we are eager to hear from you. Thank you very much.